3 years ago, I was living with my then boyfriend in a one-bedroom apartment in a little mountain town. It was a half-basement unit, so the bottom of our windows were level with the ground outside. It was also an older apartment, but not all the windows could fully lock. One day, my boyfriend comes home from work, and while I'm laying on the sofa, he immediately runs up to the window near me and looks out of it frantically. He then goes out to look at every other window in the house. Then he walks around the outside looking in the windows. When he comes back from this confusing trip, I ask him what the fuck's going on and why he's being a spaz. I think I just walked up on a dude looking in the window at you. He took off as I walked up to him, he says to me. This was, naturally, very unsettling, but after discussing it and considering the time of day, it was about 2 p.m. and the number of people out and about around the complex at the time, we came to a conclusion that it was just a curious neighbor or someone passing by that happened to glance in. With that, we forgot about it. If only that was the end. For the next couple of months, odd stuff happened here and there. Someone would knock on the door occasionally, then when I went to answer it, no one would be there. I'd find things in my apartment that I wasn't familiar with, or things like clothing items that would vanish. I didn't really think twice about any of it until one night. My boyfriend and I were arguing around 1 or 2 in the morning, and we were being a little loud. We were standing in the kitchen, face to face. His back was to the window, with the blinds up halfway, and I was facing it. Amidst our arguing, I glanced behind him at the window, thinking I saw the reflection of my face in it. The window was open. It wasn't my face. There was a man with his face pressed almost against the window screen watching us. Given the fact that we were arguing and it was late, I thought for a moment that it might have been a concerned neighbor walking up to the window to speak to us. A main walkway for the complex was right on the other side of our window, so I spoke to him. "Hello, can I help you?" I asked a little aggressively, thinking a neighbor was intruding on our privacy. He responded to this by staring, unwavering and cold, right at me. His face did not change expression. He did not blink or move, just looked right at me in a way I've never been looked at before or since. In this instant, I also realized that because of the window being level with the ground, the only way this man's face could be where it was if he was laying on the ground outside the apartment or crouched and contorted to look into my window. My heart sank. I buried my face in my boyfriend's chest and closed my eyes in fear. My boyfriend, up to this point, thought I was fucking with him. When I buried my face in his chest, only then did he say, "Is there really someone out the window?" I whispered a very scared yes to him. He felt my fear and took a moment before he turned around. By the time he did, the man was gone. It was at this point I started to think about all the little odd occurrences that I've been experiencing. I assumed the worst. I filed a police report with his description, and my brother loaded my apartment up with weapons to protect me, or at least inform this peeping Tom that I was armed. After that night, myself, my boyfriend, and my brother were all on high alert. There were a couple times when my brother came over that he saw a sketchy dude hanging around, and even one time saw him at my window. He tried to follow him discreetly, but the guy took off running as soon as my brother stepped in his direction. The last night I had an experience with this man. I was sitting alone on my sofa. My boyfriend has work at a restaurant about 2 blocks away. He picked me up from work an hour earlier. We had sat on the sofa together a little while when we got home. Then he kissed me and left for work, locking the door behind him. After he left, I continued to sit on the couch on Reddit for a while in silence. After about an hour of me sitting there in silence, I hear a door creak open. It's a small apartment, so to see the bedroom and bathroom doors from the couch, all I had to do was lean a little to the left. I assumed it was one of my cats coming out of my bedroom, so you can imagine my shock when I lean over and see a door opening that's the door to the water heater closet. I look to my right to see my cat sleeping soundly at the other end of the couch. I look back to the door and it's still creaking open very slowly. It opens enough for me to see it, a set of fingers wrapped around the door, easing the door ever so gently to open it as quietly as possible. That's a no for me. I ran my barefoot ass out the door into the snow and down the street to my boyfriend's work. I called the cops. When everybody was back to check out the apartment, he was, of course, gone. After that, my boyfriend and I packed our shit, went to stay with my parents, and 6 months later moved 1,000 miles away from that town. That was the end of it. I initially found this sub around that time as I was trying to find other stories similar to mine. or people to talk to who had experienced something like that. I had intended to write my story here eventually, and I had figured after this week's events I had to. I live 1,000 miles away from where all this happened, so a part of me thinks there's no way this person could have found me. But last week, I heard a knock on my front door of my apartment. I was expecting a package, so I figured it was a delivery driver, and I didn't answer. I'd go get the package later. Then they knocked again, and again. The third one made me feel uneasy, so I waited a good 20 minutes to check the door. When I did, there was no package, no note, no nothing. Someone was just knocking. Although it made me uneasy, I didn't initially think back to my stressful experience in my last town. Then 2 days ago, I went out to get groceries. I have a little patio, and I go out there in the mornings just to chill or check on plants a lot, and I've been known to leave it unlocked in the day on accident sometimes. I never really thought of it as a huge deal until I came home from the store 2 days ago, and the deadbolt to my apartment was locked. The deadbolt can only be locked from the inside of the apartment, period. I assumed someone robbed me because I dumbly left my patio unlocked. I called my sister. I called my current boyfriend. I waited for people to be with me, and I went into my apartment through the sliding glass patio door. Nothing was out of place. Nothing of value was taken. At this point, my heart sank. Nothing was touched. Nothing was stolen. Someone was inside my apartment just because they wanted to be inside of my apartment. I told my boyfriend about my stalker, and he's not taking this shit lightly like my past boyfriend. I filed a police report. We checked for recording devices and cameras. He put Nest cameras all over the place, and we're on high alert. I really truly hope this is a coincidence, but if this man really followed me across multiple state lines, I don't know. But there's no one on earth I'm less interested in meeting than this guy, so let's hopefully never meet. I just found this sub recently, and I don't think my story is of the same caliber as most, but I believe it's worth sharing. To give a little backstory, I started dating my current boyfriend when I was 16, and my boyfriend was 15. Now I'm 20, and he's 19. He had just moved to the area out of the state and didn't really know anyone yet. It was kind of a bad area, so when his parents found out the landlord/neighbor had a son that went to our school, they encouraged him to hang out with the kid. I wish I could show you all how creepy he looked to begin with. He was a creepy looking redneck stoner type with a lanky build and red hair. We could tell the kid had some slight issues and even discussed it in private. He didn't really pick up social cues very well, smoked a ton of weed, and didn't take no for an answer. We were extremely nice to him for a long time and would always be courteous at worst when he would come over. But we soon realized that his issues were worse than we initially thought. He would open the door and come in, making himself at home all the time, and he would just walk in with a blunt or pipe and start smoking weed right there in our house. Eventually, it was an everyday routine. Get home from school, there he is, staying until you forced him out, trying to convince you to let him stay when you're going to bed. He would make up excuses like, "Man, I just wanted to use your Netflix." Over the next few months, it became obvious that no amount of sugarcoating would get him to leave us alone. Just smoking weed all the time there was an issue. My boyfriend's dad and uncle were living there, and they both were recovering drug addicts. Not that weed was a hard drug, but it gave this kid the chance to introduce them to K2. His uncle got heavily addicted to K2 and ended up stealing all kinds of money to feed his habit. And guess what? The neighbor always stole his uncle's K2 to get a known addict addicted to something you want so you can take it when they buy it. I honestly don't know why this family didn't do something about this kid at this point. When just my boyfriend and I were home, he would come over and knock on the door over and over again. You would think that someone might linger up on your porch for a few minutes before giving up, but no. He would stay for 2 to 3 hours at a time. He would knock for an extended amount of time, take a quick break and smoke some weed on my front porch, and then continue knocking. My boyfriend and I would close all the blinds in the house before leaving for school, or else we wouldn't be able to walk around after school. He would see us from the window and tell us to let him in. I ended up getting a license in a car, which would turn out to be a huge problem. Before, we could simply pretend we weren't there. His parents would be at work, so their car would be gone. But now my car was the big sign screaming, "We're home," and he used it to his advantage. His knocking turned into shooting BB pellets at the windows of my boyfriend's room and trying to open the windows, pulling and pushing on the door to try to break it open. Yet when my boyfriend's parents were home, he would act like nothing happened. He would still be unbearable, demanding, take things without asking. He would come in if the door was unlocked, but didn't knock for hours. They believed us when we told them how he was acting, but they asked us to continue doing what we were doing because they wanted to stay on good terms with the landlord. Due to unrelated teenage angst and drama, my boyfriend and I would split up for a bit. You know, the teenage breaks where you're still together but don't have a title or whatever? Yeah, it was one of those. We spent the same amount of time together, but I guess the neighbor saw things differently. He started telling my boyfriend's mom that he really wanted to have sex with me and steal me away from our son. Creepy? I think very. It didn't take long for the Facebook messages to come pouring in. None of them were explicitly sexual, but he would ask me to give him rides to school and hang out with him alone. He told me that I was too good for my boyfriend and that he wanted to treat me better. It only took a day of this for me to block him. So eventually he went back to his usual banging on the door for hours technique. My boyfriend's parents knew by now that the situation was out of hand and they moved into a new rental as quickly as they could, and it was long overdue. The new place is about 5 miles away and nobody told him where their new address was, but he found my car and started visiting there too. It wasn't until my boyfriend's parents got a large protective dog that he stopped coming around. They had dog sat her before and she had always tried to bite him, but she went crazy when he showed up to the new house, her house. We knew he was there before he even knocked on the door because she went batshit crazy. He opened the door and she tried to attack him. He was prepared since he heard her barking and closed the door quickly. We told him he needed to leave and he couldn't come back. The landlord wasn't an issue anymore since they moved. Since then, 2 years ago, he's shown up twice to ask for money, but only if someone is outside. If my car is there, he will knock on the back door, which is connected to my boyfriend's room. It's only happened a few times, but we don't answer that door anymore. I believe that if they hadn't gotten that dog, he would have continued harassing us continually until the police were involved. Bad things happen when you're too nice to the wrong people.